Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 249. And we are joined today by a very special guest who we've just been talking to actually before pressing record. And we've had to say, let's stop talking, let's record, and then we're going to have this conversation because it's already really interesting. But I'm just going to touch base with Pete and just make sure he's okay in Bath, Somerset. How are you doing, Pete?
I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to this, actually. Like you say, we've already had some top content before we even started, so we'll have to go through all that again, won't we? I think this is going to be a good one, and we're already talking about getting this guest back on again as well, because it seems like we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so we are joined today by Dr. Nancy Allen, and Dr. Nancy Allen is the medical director of Renaissance Reset for Menopause. She's an NHS GP since 2001. So I make that with my maths 25 years as an NHS GP. She's a member of the Royal College of GPs and the British Menopause Society. And yeah, we're just going to dive in because there's so much I think that we're going to be able to cover with Nancy. But first of all, Nancy, welcome to the Health Odyssey podcast.
Well, Peter and James, thank you so much for inviting me to speak on your podcast. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, excellent. It's lovely. And whereabouts are you at the moment, Nancy? Where are you based?
I'm based in the northwest of England in Chester.
Chester. Okay, excellent. Okay, fantastic. So you have been an NHS GP for the last quarter century.
Oh, no.
Steady on, James.
Sorry. Okay. And I'm going to start by, usually we kind of start by kind of asking like the guests that we have on, maybe, right, well, tell us about your background and how you got to where you are. But we're going to kind of kick off really and just ask you, because just before recording you mentioned the kind of the hormonal shift that both men and women have in midlife, and why it is that within your practice as a doctor you've gravitated towards this kind of you mentioned menopause and andropause, I think is the male equivalent. What is it within your practice that saw you take such an interest in this kind of midlife stage for your patients and for the population in general?
Well, to be very honest, it's something that's very dear to my heart, because when I was 42, I had two children in primary school, and I was hit with the perimenopause. So I was starting to get aches and pains and hot flushes. And in my mind at that time, I was very anti. They drummed it in us. There was a study that said HRT caused breast cancer, and I thought, no, I can do this without HRT or anything like that. But my sleep was affected. I had a male patient on the couch, and I was examining him, and my glasses steamed up due to a hot flush, and it was so embarrassing. That was the melting point when I said, I can't continue like this. I've got to do something about it. And I was just all over the place. And even despite my medical training, it kind of threw me. And it was a long journey. I gained a stone in weight, and it was just like, I had no control over my body. And I was just gaining weight. I didn't do anything different, didn't eat anything differently, but yet I wasn't the same person. Brain fog, all of that. So I managed to understand a lot of factors that have changed, where I'm now healthier than I was when I was in my 20s. I'm fitter, healthier, metabolically. I'm 3 decades younger than my chronological age. So when I was in hospital medicine, I was on a geriatric ward, which is care of the elderly. I was first introduced to the concept of something called a chronological age and a biological age. So chronological age is how old you are on your birth certificate. Biological age is how you are able to function independently. And you know, we go around with young doctors following the consultant, and I started looking at people on the beds differently. People, and they sort of, the consultant would introduce so and so. This is Mr. Whoever, and he is 92 years old, but he has a biological age of 70, and it just that concept never changed, but we didn't actually do much about it as doctors. We could have prescribe, and we reach a point we're very poor in preventative medicine, I believe, in the NHS, and this is why I'm here. I really believe in lifestyle and more preventative medicine, and I'm hoping to give your listeners 4 tools today to monitor and track to help increase something called a health span. Our lifespan is increasing anyway because we prescribe more, we sort of have more support, but it's not about your health, your lifespan. You don't just want to live longer, you want to be able to live a healthy life as independent as you are today. So I'm sure Peter and James, you have things that you love doing. You don't want to lose that when you hit a certain age. So in the UK, I'd like to imagine what the average lifespan is at the moment for males. There's a difference between men and women, but what's the average lifespan for a man? You're both blokes, so what's the
I
UK?
think I was going to say it's around the like late 70s to early 80s now, isn't it? I think.
It's currently 83.5, so just under 84. But guess what the average health span is?
I'm going to say
So,
60.
so is this the age up until when you start to deteriorate health wise and you're taking medications and all this sort of stuff? Is that
Well,
what that
health
means?
span is when you're healthy, you do what you do at the moment.
Mm,
Your health hasn't impacted
mm,
so you want to go for a walk, you want to cycle, you want to lift your shopping, you
mm,
want to vacuum, you want to go on a holiday and
mm,
trek. That's your health span, where you can do everything you want to do without impacting
mm.
your activities. So
So
what
yeah, like Pete said, probably like what mid 60s maybe.
yeah, that's true. It's 63. But if you look at the numbers, that's a 20-year gap
Which is a
between
quarter, of your life, which is a lot, isn't it?
Well, I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend, working really hard, long hour days for 6 decades just to sort of spend the next 20 years after, even before retirement, where I'm not able to do the things that I'm able to do, where I'm able to work or contribute and be part of the community and, go out to the gym and swim and just do the things, walk with my kids and do the things I enjoy. So that's the essence of this podcast, is to talk about how to narrow the gap, that 20-year gap between your health span and your lifespan.
I
Excellent,
I
love
think
it.
this is funny because everything you've said there, we've spoke about before, but obviously we'll speak about it in a different way with you probably because everyone has their own views on it and stuff. But we use the saying a lot of what does it look like in 20 years? So what you do today, what does that mean in 20 years' time? Do you know what I mean? So like what you eat, what you exercise you do, how hard you work, how much stress you're under, all of these things. And what I think is interesting, what you said there is like you're on the ward, the geriatric ward, and there's people who are 92 who've got a chronological age of 92 and a biological age of 72. So in my mind, you'd find all of these people and say, right, what have they done for that to happen? And then you try and educate the younger people to say, this is what you do. So I mean, how do, like you said, you've got 4 tools to help people with this as well. So it's like, have you asked these people, and do you, is this where the tools have come from?
No, well, I tend to sort of look at numbers and evidence-based medicine. When you sort of, by the time they're on a hospital bed, they would have had some adverse health event that's put in that position, and they tend to be quite vulnerable and out of their depth, and generally speaking. But the information I'd like to share today is evidence-based medicine, which is really interesting. And one thing that we don't really talk about to our patients is brain health. So we'll start from the top. We'll talk about brain health and how that can improve your health span. So it's very interesting because a lot of people, unfortunately, in the UK have dementia. So at the moment, 4.2% of the people above the age of 65, which is 11.2 million, are registered as having dementia.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's quite sad where, you know, it's a gradual, it starts off cognitive decline very gradually, but within years, they sometimes don't recognize their family members. And, you know, I don't know if you know anybody in your family who has dementia, but it's a growing concern because people are becoming older, but then the incidence of dementia is increasing and rising. So brain health is so important. I want to focus on brain health. And we have identified, the Lancet have done a commissioning study that have identified 4 factors that listeners can identify and improve on to reduce their risk of getting dementia. Because I'm sure there's somebody out there that has a mother who has dementia, or an uncle or a grandparent, and in theory, that would put them at higher risk of getting dementia. So these 14 factors can be modified to help reduce their risk of dementia. So just focus about brain health, and then we can talk about the other things. So one of the most interesting things is that people who engage in intellectual activities tend to have a higher cognitive reserve, which means that if they were to get some decline, they can still function quite well and independently. So I think it's very important to keep, even let's say you're in your profession and you know you're stable, it's so important to continue to learn something new, even if it's a dance routine or a new language. Learning is so important to reduce your risk of getting dementia. So that's one thing. Another thing that's really, really interesting is that alcohol, unfortunately, increases your risk of getting dementia by by double, but by 3-fold. So it doesn't have any sort of nutritive benefits to the body. In fact, it causes more harm and increased risk in getting dementia. It's bad news, and I'm sure people out there sick of doctors banging on about alcohol, X, Y, and Z, but it's a fact. It's a medical fact. So if you want to reduce that risk, now's the time to be mindful of trying to cut back and be more mindful of drinking habits. So
I was
that's
just going to ask, Nancy, sorry, is that so? And just give us the straight answer. You know, is that if you have any alcohol is too much, or would you say, I know there's like these NHS guidelines of you mustn't have over this many units per week. So is a small amount okay, or is any? Because I've heard people now say, well, look, any is kind of not doing you any good. You're better off not having any, or is a small amount kind of acceptable, or where do you sit on that kind of advice?
where I would say is to be practical rather than sort of create anxiety and put, you know, make people very anxious about it. And you can't just switch off something that, because there are benefits to socializing and drinking within that social aspect, but also there's loads of zero alcohol options available at the moment, like zero Guinness or zero, there's so many different zero beers. So if you can reduce it, I would say that's my. I think
Yeah.
it's far too pragmatic to say zero alcohol. And they haven't actually done a study to say if you take 2 units, this is your risk, or if you take 21 units, this is your risk. There's no evidence to say, to answer your question directly, but I think to be more pragmatic, I would say just, you know, cut back as much as you can, and perhaps on special occasions, because it has proven to increase your risk. So another one is obesity. It's a big no-no as well. They find that the fat cells release all sort of cytokines and things, that there is a direct increase with obesity and dementia as well. It seems to be the root of a lot of diseases and linking with that. But I'm sure, as you know, there's these new injections and there's new medications plus lifestyle factors. I mean, I was in a high street shop the other day with my daughter, and I could just hear 2 people saying, oh, I'm on this injection now and I've lost 2 stone. It seems to be just a high street brand that so many people are on these injections, and we actually are embracing it now. It's just become so many people. It is improving their factors, and it is hard, especially if you have a desk job, to get in, 5 hours of, working out a week and 10,000 steps a day. So, and the brain sometimes forces you with the set point to stay obese. It's really, really hard. It's not that easy to lose weight.
This is interesting because I've got a walking group, and we were out last night on a walk, and there was a lady who came along, first time she's ever been along, and she's on those injections. She's lost 12 stone in a year.
Wow.
But she was told by a doctor that she wouldn't see Christmas if she didn't do something. So she did something, and I think she's probably in her 60s. She's had she lost a child when she was younger, and she's had some trauma and all of this sort of stuff. So it was all kind of added up. But we did a podcast. It might have been the episode that went out last week. But we did a thing about finding a purpose and all of that, because, a lot, especially people who are morbidly obese, it's usually a mental thing rather than a physical thing, isn't it? I would say, like,
Yes.
and we were talking about finding a purpose, because you can try and lose the weight, but if you're not losing it for a particular reason, like a really solid reason, then it makes it harder. Whereas for hers, I think she'd been through so much trauma in her life and all of this. It was like, I need to do something about it now, or I'm going to die. And she's got a 24-year-old son, and she's like, he won't have anybody to look after. Well, he doesn't need looking after anymore, but it's still young and all of that. So that's just really interesting, because she works for the NHS as well. So she said she had friends saying, well, it's easy for you because you've got access to this drug. I can't remember which one it was, but she's like, and lots of people have got opinions on whether it's good or bad. And I don't know, because this is the first person I've spoken to who, like myself, who's done this. And I'm like, but if it gets you 12 stone off in a year, you're still alive. You're now out on a 5-mile walk that we did yesterday that she wouldn't have been able to do a year ago.
Absolutely.
That's a great start. So then you can come off the injections, and she's changed her lifestyle as well in that year.
Yeah.
So, and we've had another guy on, Steve Bush, who had a gastric band fitted a while ago, and it's one of James's clients, members at his gym. And again, people have got opinions on that, but he's embraced it. It's worked. He's kept the weight off, and he's got a completely different lifestyle now. And it's amazing. So, sorry, there's not a question in there.
No. It's a fantastic illustration how both sides, what obesity can stop you from doing, and the fact that when you do focus on your lifestyle, when the doctor said to her, you'd be lucky if you survive until Christmas, and that was a trigger that made her do something. I'm hoping your listeners don't get to that stage and start implementing some factors later on to avoid, getting cancer and getting type 2 diabetes and dementia. But you said a buzzword. You said the word purpose. The word purpose is so interesting because they were looking at global longevity, and we have like these blue hotspots in the world where they have the highest amount of what's the word? Where people over the age
centenarians, I think.
Centenarians.
Yeah.
Thank you, James. Over the age of 100. So apparently that these 5 blue zones are Okinawa in Japan, where 54.4 out of 100,000 are over the age of 100, and that for them is normal. But they found in their research, they have these little pods and like groups of friendships, and these people still, they feel they have a purpose within the community. So the word purpose is so important. And before I leave that, I'll just add in the other 5 areas of these blue zones. So it's Okinawa in Japan, I can't say it, Ikaria in Greece, Sardinia in Italy, there's Loma Linda in the USA, and Nicoya in Costa Rica. And all these people just are more active on a day-to-day basis. So activity is a very, very important factor, going back to brain health again, that reduces your risk of getting dementia. So I want to just expand on activity, if I may, to say 1 in 6 deaths in the UK are linked to inactivity. For whatever reason. If it's just our culture, is it just the fact We work too hard with the cost of living crisis, some people having to do 2 jobs, take on extra hours, extra shifts, whatever. And we are 20% less active than we were in the 60s, the 1960s. So your parents were probably 20% more active just by doing day-to-day activities, walking to the bus stop, doing X, Y, and Z. Whereas now we've got so many options like getting on, driving your car, etc. Or hybrid working is a nightmare because everybody's sat at home all day. That's another thing since COVID. So we are less active than we were in the 1960s. So, and they're saying that you can improve chronic diseases. And when I say chronic diseases, things like diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, all these are silent killers by being active. And
And all of them as well, are they, Nancy, if I'm right? All of these are kind of lifestyle diseases, aren't they? Because they're not like a communicable disease that you'd catch off of someone. They're all things that we kind of do to ourselves through the way that we live life nowadays. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. So talking about obesity, guess what the numbers are for the UK? We are the fat people of Europe, unfortunately.
30%.
Go on, Peter. You were saying
It's 30% and it's doubled in the last 30 years. Is that right?
between overweight and obese, 75% of the UK population. We are officially out there. That's not good.
Yeah, that's up with America, isn't it? Almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I looked into this a while ago, and I think like actual obesity, even though has obesity been recalibrated to what obese actually is? I think anyway.
I think it's still a BMI of over 30, isn't it? Is the
I saw it as like actual obesity is 30%, but then overweight is still a problem, isn't it?
Between the two,
I didn't know the 75%, which is a lot, isn't it? And the thing is, I know I looked into this, and I think it's the diet industry. We spend something like £2 billion per year on the diet, not clinical diets and all that sort of stuff, like just diet products, commercial diet products, which will have been the amount of money spent over the last 30 years will have increased year on year on that as well. But we've still doubled the amount of obesity, which
what's worse is that 11 billion of the UK population spend 11 billion pounds per year is spent on confectionery.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Confectionery.
11 billion.
So, we are spending our household income on comfort foods and just confectionery, which doesn't have any nutritional value. So,
I think I also heard somewhere, this was probably about 10 years ago. I think it was on a Hugh Fernie-Whittenstall program when he was talking about obesity and stuff. And I think it's something like 10% of the NHS budget is spent on just managing type 2 diabetes, not even looking at the causes or anything, just managing the symptoms. It was like, I think it was like 10% of the budget or something. It was like, that was something like 11 billion or something. It was, but I mean, it was a big number, and we know that that's growing.
But it is the incidence of type 2 diabetes, which can be reversible. It's absolutely shocking. But going back to dementia, if you do get type 2 diabetes, that's one of the 14 factors that have been identified to, improving your brain health is by having low GI food, sort of trying not to, have a lot of high carb, high fructose diets, like, whole food eating is so important. Or another word which is quite popular is just like clean eating. I don't know, James, are you in the health, you believe you are in the fitness?
Yeah, we're all in that sort of space. And that kind of, like you say, unprocessed foods, more single ingredient whole foods, just more, the less processed you can have, the better. It's incredible, because I think I've also heard, I don't know if it was more in American podcasts and things, but where they actually started to refer to like dementia as like type 3 diabetes or something now. They kind of actually have made that real link to the insulin resistance and all this kind of issue that goes on. So with the dementia, then we've got the three things that you said. I think you might have said that there was four, but I've written down continually learning and stimulating the brain and using the cognitive function, reducing the amount of alcohol that you have.
Yes.
Obesity is another big risk factor that you said. Was there something? I mean, I know
there's a tool I want to give you,
yeah.
Which was fascinating. This is when I was just reading up to do this this episode with you, which was intriguing, is depression. So depression has an increased risk of dementia. So how do you know if you're clinically depressed?
No idea. I don't
Well,
know.
this is the tool I want to give you. It's called, I can send you a link and you can put it in the show notes, hopefully. It's called the PHQ-9 questionnaire. So it's on Google. You can just put PHQ-9 PDF and you can print it off, answer it, take it to your GP and go, here you go. What do you think I should do? That will just gauge if you do have signs of depression. But it's things where you feel low in your mood, poor motivation, you just feel quite sad most of the days. But depression, there's a direct link. If you are feeling depressed, you really need to reach out and do something about it. So that is an actual, because if you don't treat it, and unfortunately men are the least people to, I don't know, is it a macho thing? Men, they just do not, they come into me looking guilty in the clinic and say, my wife said I should come here, they just like concede and just like, it's not me, it's somebody else forced me to come in. And I don't know why men just don't like coming to the doctor.
Is it a theory? Anyway, my experience in this is it's because men don't talk about things. They go out and talk about football.
Why?
Women will go either to the pub or to the coffee shop or whatever, or in a book club or whatever it is, and they talk about things and you talk about feelings and all of that, and men don't. And like I said, the walking group that I do, I've been building it up over the last couple of years, and we've got loads of people coming along, mainly women, because it's all about walking and talking and stuff like that, and it's mainly women. Because men will be like, well, I'll come along, but how fast do you walk? It's like, it doesn't matter. Because we'll go a distance and we'll have a chat. It's as simple as that. So it's really interesting, I think, and that's probably why. I mean, that's why I'd say why. I don't know that. I haven't got any stats behind it or anything. But
what's your take on it, James? Why don't men come to the doctor?
I don't know. I'm not a good person to ask because I don't think I've been to the doctor for over 20 years. And I don't know why I don't.
One thing
I think if I had something wrong with me, if I really felt like I had something wrong with me, I think I would go to the doctor. But because I don't, I don't. I haven't really had any need to go to the doctor. It would be what I would say. I don't know.
For me, they'll come in and say, doctor, could I have a bit of Viagra? And that's when a red flag goes up in my mind. So this kind of links to cardiovascular disease. And so I'll talk about ED in men, erectile dysfunction. So the numbers are quite shocking, but 20%, 1 in 5 men from the age of 30 to 80 have erectile dysfunction. That's a lot of men. But why is that important? It's important because it's an indicator that it's sort of a precursor to having cardiovascular disease. So ideally, if one of your listeners out there has erectile dysfunction, they really need to be, and they can get it over the counter. They don't necessarily have to get it from the GP. I don't know what the exact numbers are for over the counter purchases of ED meds like Viagra, whatever that's on the that they can get. But if they do, they should really be asking their doctor for a full profile. So they need a full hormone profile, like their testosterone levels checked. They need to be checking their cholesterol, their LDLs. They need to be doing a full assessment of their blood pressure as well. So if there's anybody out there or anybody's partner has erectile issues and they're taking meds, which there's nothing wrong with doing that, but they really need to be asking, what's the root cause behind that? Because, you know, this is where a lot of people, like I said, men don't come to the doctors, and we don't know unless they tell us, and they probably won't come until it's far too late. So it increases their cardiovascular risk by 1.5 times. So if you're already in that category, you need to really be going to your doctor, checking your triglycerides, doing a full panel of blood work.
Because is it true that like Viagra was actually created by accident, wasn't it? It was meant to be like a vasodilator to actually help blood flow, and then they realized that when you took it, that was the sort of side effect. Because is that true, or is that just something I've heard?
I'm not sure. I don't know about that one. I'd have to do a
Yeah,
bit of
okay,
research
yeah. Because
on it.
I think that I'm sure I've heard a number of times that it wasn't actually designed as a medication to, you know, treat erectile dysfunction, but it was like a something to do with like you know, dilating the blood vessels and to actually more for the heart. But
Yeah.
because it had that vasodilation, if you like, and increased blood flow, that was kind of one of the you know, the side effects, which obviously then became probably one of the most marketable drugs in the world, you know. So yeah, it's quite
So
interesting.
screening yourself for depression is really important. Now,
Mm,
sleep tracking is really, really important. And I found a really cheap hack to tracking my sleep, which is like the price of 3 coffees. And I'm really into wearable smart tech. And I mean, without mentioning any names, but I think the science behind it is really helpful. We started in medicine using digital technology to track certain things since the 60s, but now it's available on Amazon, where you can buy, for example, a smart ring, which you charge once a week, literally for the price of about £30, like four or five coffees, and you charge it once a week, and it will track your sleep, which is really, really important that you try and get between 7 to 8 hours sleep a day.
mm.
So that's another action.
I think I read as well, sorry Nancy, that if you lack of sleep is a precursor for dementia as well, isn't it? Or is it true? Because when you're sleeping, it's when your brain health actually, you know, your brain reconfigures and heals and sorts
It,
itself out.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
so important. You know, we haven't evolved, you know, since mankind we ever existed. We still need 8 hours sleep. So it is
Mm,
such an important part of
mm,
your cognitive health that you
mm,
do sleep. And lack of sleep can be a precursor for, you know, anxiety, for example. Another benefit of wearing some type of smart tech, that wearables, is that you can track your blood pressure.
mm,
Um, so a lot of people don't actually know what a normal blood pressure is.
mm,
So, you know, you can download the app, wear the ring once, you know, and you charge it once a week, and it will give you you know, your readings constantly throughout the day. And you can just take it to your doctor and say, hey, look, this is my blood pressure. So a normal blood pressure is 120/80.
mm,
So it's at the midlife point where it starts creeping up, and sometimes we don't know why. And this is it. It's a silent disease. And again, hypertension, which is another one of the 14 factors, is a precursor to getting dementia. So if you start tracking your health,
mm.
it reduces your risk.
Mm.
And why not track it rather than spend, you know, coffees at, you know, at the high street coffee shop? Just invest in your health for £30. I think it's
Yep.
interesting because you've got objective data, your own biometric data you can take to your doctor, because you've only got 10 minutes, and, you know, next, here you go, doctor, what do you think? And then that's it. You're
I,
ready.
I think this is brilliant. I mean, I don't use any wearable tech or anything like that.
Why not? Why
I
not?
just don't. I just don't. But I mean, I tend to, you know, I don't drink as much as I used to. You know, I'm in the fitness industry. We do exercise. I eat. I don't eat processed foods, all that sort of stuff. But maybe I should. I don't know. I not eat processed foods. I mean, maybe I should wear some wearable tech. However, it's interesting though, because like talking about menopause and stuff like that, you know, things like that, and things like this wearable tech, is if you go to the doctor and just say, this is how I feel, they're going to want to know They're going to then go, right, well, go away and do this or whatever and say, like, you know, and then when you come back, we'll analyze the data. Whereas if you can do it before you go. So I said this to my girlfriend because she's how old is she now? 48. So, you know, she's in the menopause world, whatever you want to call it. She's menopausal. And I said, before you go to the doctor with it, just start writing your symptoms down, keep a little diary. And then when you go in, you just go, here's what it looks like. Because it looks different for everyone, doesn't it? So here's what it looks like. And that was really interesting because they knew what to do. Or like, I know it's trial and error, but immediately it was like, right, let's start you here and we'll see how it goes. And that would reduce the time that you have to go to the doctor for a start. And also it would reduce all the wasted time that goes with all of that and save the NHS time and money. But I think that's a really good message to send to people, because also, again, I was talking about this last night. If you say to people, just keep a diary of how much you actually eat, keep a diary of how much sleep you get, keep a diary of this stuff. People don't want to because they don't want to know, because they know it's not going to look great. They eat more than they think. They spend more than they think. They sleep less than they want to when they know this. And if they actually know the real numbers, it's really scary. But actually, if you know the real numbers and you're truthful about it, you can do something about it, right?
Exactly. If you don't measure your weight, you don't measure your biometrics, how are you going to create the habits? Another thing, you know, if you're wearing something, how will you know you get your 10,000 steps a day? Before I started measuring, you know, I go in at 7:30, I don't come out till 7 o'clock. So that's what, 11 and a half hour day.
Yeah.
Before I started measuring, I would literally be doing like 3,000 steps a day, and you know, repeat, wash, rinse, and repeat. But now I'll wake up earlier before I do my morning shift, and then I will do my, you know, I'll try and get about 8,000 steps, and at lunch I can try and get another 4. But I get my steps in when I'm duty doctor, so I'm able to do that, which is, you know, but if I hadn't measured, I'm not able to do that. So measuring, I think, you know, for £30, I think if it's possible, it's certainly worth giving it a go.
It's so lovely to hear you, Nancy, as a doctor, talking about this. It's this personal responsibility of the individual to take ownership of their health and their activity, and to track and to be really proactive with this stuff. Because like you said, medicine really traditionally is well, certainly within the NHS setup, is reactive, isn't it? It's, I've got a problem, I go to the doctor, I get given some medicine, you know, to deal with the symptom. But you're really talking about this from a proactive personal responsibility kind of place. Is this very different than lots of your colleagues, do you find? I mean, I don't expect you to drop anyone in it, but I mean...
Many of my colleagues, I suppose as colleagues, I don't know if my colleagues have actually advise their patients to do it personally, but it makes a lot of sense, because if you, let's say you go in, you have a funny turn and you get your blood pressure checked, and then they say, oh, you've got high blood pressure. You go to your doctor and they'll give you a diary and a blood pressure on to do a 7-day diary, but you're ahead of the game, you know, and that could have been latent, sort of silently in you for years before you actually present to the doctor, and you don't know what damage it's done to you already. So I'm a big believer in that. So going back to the dementia.
Yeah, sorry, keep going off topic.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
So social isolation, that's another factor. So I don't know, I think our society are quite cruel to people once they retire. And a lot of people have this golden dream of working really, really hard, and then after a certain age, and then retiring. I mean, I'm never going to hang up my stethoscope. I'm going to keep on going until, you know, the last minute. In fact, I would just want to keel over on my desk seeing patients. That's the way I want to do it. I don't really want to ever stop. And, you know, unfortunately, there's benefits to being productive and working and having a purpose, Peter, that word you said. I think it's so important that you have that, but everything in moderation, obviously. What can people do you think, to avoid social isolation?
Go walking in a group.
Yeah, okay. So So yeah, brilliant. James, do you have any
Yeah.
tips
Yeah, I
about?
mean, I think like you mentioned, I think that ties in with the purpose, and you mentioned the blue zones and the you know, things like volunteering, you know, like getting involved. I know that she's 74, my mum, but she's retired. She was in the NHS herself for like 50 odd years, you know, working from when she was a teenager or 20 up until she retired. But she's very active now, but she also volunteers. You know, she's a chair in a charity. She also 1 or 2 days a week she goes and works in like British Heart Foundation shop, you know. So I think it's just you have to put yourself out there, don't you? And if you can tie things together, like Pete said, the walking group, you're getting the fresh air, you're getting the community and the talking and the social network, and you're getting the benefit of walking and health and fitness as well. So I suppose it's just trying to find those things, isn't it?
This is what I tell my patients. So I'll give them a pep talk, and then they'll say, "Yeah, I'll join the gym." And I say, "You don't need to join the gym. Just walk. Just
Mm,
walk every day. That's all you need to do, because
mm,
walking and just embedding that in your daily routine. So instead of can you walk to work? If you can't, can you park the car further away and walk more?
mm,
Carrying weights, a bit of resistance training, because I'll talk about muscle mass. Between the age of 30 and 40, you start losing muscle mass 1% every year, and that's for men and women. So
mm,
you need to actually do resistance training. And I know that puts the fear of God in a lot of people. The word resist, what does that mean? Lift weights. And, it used to intimidate me, to be honest.
mm,
You'd see all these big, bulky men in the gym, and I used to be intimidated by it, but I got out of my comfort zone, and I've started lifting, and I track my biometrics, and
mm.
it's made a massive difference. And that's part of my journey into helping me lose that extra stone that I got in the perimenopause, which was an absolute nightmare. So
Yeah,
I,
I've seen the videos of you. I've seen some videos of you on social media, like lifting and in the gym and doing like deadlifts and squats and things like that. So, I mean, in terms of, and that's something I think is probably more. You're the third female guest we've had in a row. Three very different women, but all with kind of a good, healthy, strong message towards training and fitness, and women getting involved in strength as well and things like that. So for you, as a sort of female in midlife, if I can say
yeah,
that,
yeah, I am.
how important is it for women to strength train?
Well, if you actually, I've put a video out of me. I have osteopenia,
Mm,
which means I haven't got fragile bones, but I've got, like, my bones are delicate. But
mm,
I do resistance training, and I do all of X, Y, and Z. And I was box jumping, and I've actually videoed it. I put it out on social media, and I fell. So I jumped about a meter up on a box. And I gave it too much energy. I over sort of jumped, and I fell flat on my arms outstretched.
yeah,
That would normally be like most women, even from standing, fall, at above the age of 50, would fall from standing, or even twist an ankle, end up with plates in their leg. But
yeah,
I thought, when I fell, I realized immediately what happened. Oh, and I couldn't control it. The inertia, I just fell flat on my face from a meter up above. But I came out, I wasn't even scratched. And I thought, thank heavens.
mm,
But it's resistance training. And so I get a bone scan every 3 years, because I am menopausal, and I do have osteopenia, and I've actually improved my numbers. And again, it's back to tracking. I mean, you can't actually measure your bone scan. You have to have a proper DEXA scan to measure your bone
mm,
strength. But I've improved it, and I can stay like this probably if I continue doing what I'm doing, because in my case it's genetic. My mum had osteoporosis, and I was like, okay, what can I do to modify it and help prevent having. My mum unfortunately had a hip fracture, uh,
mm,
just rolling in bed. So, and it's made me very, very aware. That's the last thing I want to do, is end up like
mm.
that, because it's knocked her confidence. And yeah.
Yeah, so the strength training for maintaining increasing bone density, and obviously maintaining increasing muscle mass. Like you say, it's, if you do not, it is, we mentioned that it's similar to the dementia and the brain health. It's the kind of use it or lose it, isn't it? You know, if you're not testing yourself and pushing yourself, but if you do, then you can actually halt the decline and actually still make improvements in bone density and muscle mass as you get older, can't you? So
Absolutely. I mean, there's a mind-muscle connection, but not only do your muscles feed back to your brain, but it's, you know, people who exercise don't really get depression. There's an improvement in the outcome. You know, part of the green space, we're into social prescribing now, green space and blue space prescribing, just walking in green areas, that reduces your incidence of that. So just that physical activity helps reduce your risk of getting dementia and depression and everything. Just activating when your muscles activate your brain, learning a new routine, jumping on box. I mean, I'm not saying everybody go and I not
yeah.
recommend it unless they start low and build it up. It took me years to
It's
box jump.
it's
Yeah.
funny though, because with this, I find this like interesting because you've got osteopenia, I think you said, and then there's sarcopenia is the muscle loss, isn't it? And that's
It is,
what
yeah.
we're talking about, which happens to everybody, but you
Yes.
can reverse it as well if you
Absolutely.
resistance training and everything. And it's interesting because people might go, well, I haven't got that, so it's fine, or I haven't got that. It doesn't matter whether you've got it or not. Any of these things, all of the things we're talking about, bit of resistance training, going walking in nature, eating less processed food, drinking, all of these things help everybody, regardless of any of those things, don't they? So it doesn't, you don't have to have, because people might say, well, you know, you can get people who are obese and they go, I've been to the doctor and all of my markers are fine. It's like, well, there might be now, but at some point there won't be. Even if you're at a healthy weight, and we were talking about this the other week, I don't even know what that means anymore, what a healthy weight is, because it depends how much muscle mass and bone mass and bone density and all of that sort of stuff. But even at that, as you get older, your markers are going to change unless you do something with it now, isn't it? Like
your actual cell, you have a cycle. There's a cell cycle. So this time tomorrow, you're a day older.
yeah,
Oxidation will have happened. So unless you invest actively now, every day, your body just keeps a log of every inactive step you've done and every active step you've done, and you'll pay for it. So it depends. You know, this is where you need, before you go to bed today, you need to have seen, unless, you know, you're traveling and you're doing like a 9-hour flight or something ridiculous, you need to actually make an effort to be active. It's your health, because they'll come in and see the doctor, they prescribe, and off you go. But I hate prescribing because every medication has a side effect. Antidepressants, what's a side effect to that? You can gain weight, sexual dysfunction. There's a lot of side effects to that, and it's just, and then you get the erectile dysfunction, then another medication, then you know, you've got high cholesterol, then another medication for cholesterol. It's just endless little, but prevention, and what do I say? An ounce in prevention is better than a pound in cure. And I've always said that, and I really believe in that.
this is great. We had a guy on a few years ago. It was one of James's mate, well, someone from Chelsea, wasn't it? Ainsley.
Oh yes, Ainsley, yeah, with the
And
diabetes.
he had type 2 diabetes and whatever, but he lives in Dubai. And this was really refreshing. He went to the doctor over there. He was leaving the doctor's surgery, and there was like a diabetes test thing on the way out. So he just did it for a laugh, like something to do. And it turned out he was type 2 diabetic. So he went back he made an appointment with the doctor, went back in, and the doctor gave him a list. He had he wrote it down, and he just had a notepad, bit of paper with 9 things to do. And it was drink more water, get more sleep, eat well, and all of these things to do. And he went and did them. And now he's really active. And he started out walking around a 400-meter track.
Running track, wasn't it?
Yeah. He started out walking around a running track. And he went to the doctor a couple of weeks later. How old was he? He was like 30 or something. And the doctor was like, you're not 60. You can do more than walking. And he just encouraged him. So rather than giving him a prescription, he was like, do these things first. If you come back in a year's time and nothing's changed or whatever, you've done all of that, we can talk about that. But diet and lifestyle, basically, which was brilliant. It's refreshing to hear it, that like you say that. Honestly, it's great.
Well, touching back on, I wish all of my patients, all the patients had his attitude and took ownership and felt, well, I've got to fix this, rather than some people just go in denial.
Yeah.
They just go in denial and continue to do what they're doing. But going back to the first time I ever learned about all this was the late Michael Mosley. I went to one of his lectures about 20 years ago, and he was the first person who talked to a group of, we were junior doctors at the time. I was still maybe 1 or 2 years into general practice, and he was telling us how his patients were able to reverse diabetes through diet. And I thought, wow, that's just amazing that they could do that. And it was the beginning of me starting to tell people, but unfortunately, it's so hard to break habits.
See, I think in this day and age now that I think that's obvious. But, and we talk about this, I'm in an echo chamber because I'm in this world. So therefore, and James says the same as well. We talk to people like you, we do this podcast, and then, like social media is an echo chamber of what you put out is what you kind of get back. Yeah. So if you talk about this stuff, you get it back. So it's like, well, yeah, you can reverse all this stuff by diet and exercise and lifestyle and all that. But that's obvious, but it's not obvious to everyone. That's the thing.
It isn't.
Yeah, and it's that's why we do this, to try and get people to listen.
Going back to, you mentioned the sarcopenia word, which is a fantastic word. And, going back to that ward when I was in hospital medicine, and the geriatrician was, a lot of people, when you see them on the Zimmer frame, very frail and skinny and weight loss and hardly any muscle. And so another factor is diet. I need to talk about how you construct your plate. You don't need, I don't follow a particular diet. I just try and eat mindfully and healthy. But the most important thing that I've changed is that the first thing I put on my plate is protein. I've got to feed those muscles with amino acids, and it's in proteins, leucine, isoleucine, all those amino acids are in protein. So I put the protein on the plate first, and I aim to eat about, for me, because I lifted 150 grams a day. So the formula generally is 1 gram per pound of body weight.
Yeah.
So I worked it out and I measure it. So I'll think, okay, I'll have a few eggs in the morning. I'll have a protein yogurt, and then for lunch I'll have fish or whatever. But that's how. And then I add on, the extras. But the first thing that goes on my plate, even before the veg, is my protein. And I've taught my children that as well.
I love what you just said. 150 grams. Most people look at that and go, that is loads. But it is for most people, because most people don't eat that much. And you've just said another thing there as well. This lady I was talking to last night, who's changed her lifestyle and she was using the injection, she's lost 12 stone. She says, oh, I only have like 4 eggs a week now.
Oh,
I know, but I didn't say anything, because she's kind of at the start of her journey, right? And so she's gone from and this is what people tend to do, don't they? They'll be at this extreme and then they'll go to this extreme, and then over the years they'll end up somewhere in the middle. So she's just overhauled everything. But I found that really interesting, because a lot of people have still got this phobia, whatever you want to call it, misinformation about eggs. And I'm picking up on that specifically. There's lots of other things like saturated fats and all that, but it's all from the 80s, isn't it? I think
it is. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. It was the 80s. It was all about low fat, low this, low that. Natural fat. They're healthy fats. They're good for you.
Yeah. So using eggs specifically, we don't have to stay long on this, but what's your stance on eggs, being a medical doctor, to tell people, because we've mentioned it before, but an egg
has, I look at an egg and I think of how much protein's in it, 6 grams of protein per egg. Yep. So that's how I look at it. And, it doesn't cause you any harm. Now, I must say one caveat. If somebody has chronic kidney disease, or they've got compromise in their renal function, they would be excluded. They can't have a high protein diet. They need to then consult with their GP.
Yeah.
So I would generally go to your doctor, get a well woman, a well man check, make sure everything's okay. Everything's,
So would you say, is that where some people get the notion that if you eat too much protein, it's really bad for your kidneys. Is that where that comes from then? Because if someone has already got a kidney problem, it'll be a problem. But if they haven't, it isn't. Is that right?
So if somebody has a kidney problem, they're a different set of people. But it's good to go and get yourself checked out at your doctor. Why don't you go and do a health check? The NHS does it for free. If not, you can get, there's loads of little blood tests you can do privately if you can't be bothered, going to, your doctor. It's hard to get an appointment. It's not easy to. I've got to put my hand up and say that 8 a.m. Bottleneck is a nightmare, and it puts a lot of working people off. But there's alternatives, private options. You can get your blood work done there. So, but just another little tip for people here. If there is a way of checking if you have diabetes, which will cost you £5. So you can get a urine dipstick test on Amazon for about £5, and a healthy person shouldn't have glucose in their urine. But you can actually buy a urine dipstick yourself and test your own urine. And if it's positive for glucose, you need to go and have a conversation with your doctor.
And is that like a fasting glucose? Or would you do that in the morning?
No, just
any
do it.
time?
No, just any, just a sample of wee and just dipstick it. Yeah, positive or negative. If it's negative, it's happy days. But obviously, if it is positive, so that's another thing people can do immediately to screen themselves. So that's very important. So the final two on our 14 list are
Hang on, like it's like a run. We'll get like in at 14 is
Believe it or not, hearing loss. I mean, most people, I think it's after the age of 50, their hearing starts declining. But I've been very protective over my hearing. So if I go to sometimes you go in the gym and you put your AirPods in, your earphones, and I try not to, on my wearables, I'll monitor my decibels, and it will tell me if it's too high, because if you do expose to very high decibels for a prolonged period of time, you do get hearing loss. So that's something that's monitor the decibels around you, and wear ear muffins if you can, or ear protectors to screen yourself from, high decibels. It does accelerate hearing loss. So hearing loss. So people who haven't got a hearing aid and just ignore it, high risk of getting dementia, and also uncorrected visual issues with their vision. So it needs to be corrected. It must be a link with the brain. I'm not sure exactly why, but they're all the factors. So I hope that has been helpful.
That's absolutely brilliant. And I have to say, we've done an hour with you. We've not actually touched on menopause or andropause directly, but I think we definitely have to get you back on again, because it's so interesting. That, I mean, the whole dementia thing is a rising problem in society, isn't it? That is something that I think 30, I don't know, is it because this is another, we've spoke about this before, haven't we, Pete? Because people's lifespan is getting longer, because we can artificially keep people alive for longer through medications and interventions. Is more of this stuff showing up? Because whereas you might have been dead at 60 before, you're now living to 80. So more of this stuff is showing up in the last 20 years.
Absolutely. They did a study in the Lancet, and they have found that people are living longer, but the health span isn't necessarily matching their lifespan. And brain health is just part of it. So if you improve your brain health, everything else tends to follow suit. So we're all connected, everything, your gut microbiome, oral health, your foot health, everything. There's just so much to talk about.
So where are we going to go next when you're next on? Because you said you're going to start from the top. You said you were going to start from the top down, and we've started with the brain, and we've gone down on the brain. But what's going to be next?
I would love to hear from your audience and do a Q&A. So if you've got questions, anybody out there, if they could put questions to you, if you could put a link in the show notes, if they can ask questions, and I'd love to come back and talk, answer any questions they have out there. I'd be more than happy to help, or any other hot topics that anybody wants to talk about.
That's so good. I mean, if people want to follow you, Nancy, or what's the best? Because I've been on your website. I know you're on like Instagram and Facebook, but you're not like massively kind of like spend loads of time on there because you're obviously very, very busy working with patients and doing what you do. But if people want to know more and sort of follow you, where would you like people to go?
Just they can follow me. I'm on Instagram. They can direct message me. I love TikTok. I just think it's absolutely mind-blowing, TikTok. And I'm on my website, gpdirect.co.uk.
gpdirect.co.uk. Brilliant. Okay, now that's been so good. That's great, isn't it, Pete? That's
it's fantastic. Honestly, I love it.
Yeah.
Again, we could talk all day. So
It's
yeah.
fun, isn't it? Health is fun. Health is something you can own. You can you can live. I don't see why all three of us can't live to be 100, fit and healthy, and
Exactly.
walking barefoot on beaches, enjoying the sunshine and rain and whatever, like the Japanese do.
I know.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nancy. That was great. And we definitely will. Because we'll get Pete. You can arrange with Nancy maybe to come back on in the next. Well, we've got Dan John on next week for episode 250. But maybe we'll speak again. Hopefully,
Absolutely.
not too far in the future would be great. Thank you everybody for watching and listening, and do give Nancy a follow and do share this episode because there was so much in there. Around dementia, around, even the erectile dysfunction stuff, around the obesity, around just all the positive lifestyle interventions that you can do. And it's so great hearing an NHS doctor, talking so passionately and so eloquently and so knowledgeably about all of that is brilliant. I've just got a quick review to read. We've had another review coming on Apple Podcasts. It's just a quick one. It's by JB Strongman or John Barton, and it says, such an inspirational and informative podcast. Love listening to Health Oddity. Guests are very varied and interesting, but especially love the amount of strong men, strong women guests that are on the show. From every show, I take away some interesting information that helps me in my own strength journey. So thank you very much, John Barton, for that review. If you comment, send us a message or whatever, and tell us what size t-shirt or hoodie or sweatshirt you'd like and where to post it, we'll send you out some free Health Oddity merch. So thank you.
I'm gonna make an educated guess here and guess it's got an X in it.
An XL. He might be.
This is someone who lifts heavy stuff.
Excellent. No, thank you so much. And Nancy, that was really great. We'll definitely speak to you again soon. Okay.
It was an absolute joy. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, brilliant. And we will be back next week for episode 250 for the return of Dan John from the USA. Dan will be on with us for episode 250. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you're watching or listening on a platform that allows you to do so, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts. We're now up to 27 5-star reviews on there, so we want to get that. I'm going to say now we want that up at 50 by the end of the year. Okay, we want 50 reviews by the end of the year. So thank you very much, and thank you, John Barton, for leaving that one. We'll see you next week for episode 250 with Dan John. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Pete.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.